December 17, 1944. Somewhere near Lausdell, Belgium, the temperature is dropping fast. The ground is iron. You can hear it before you see it. A low, distant rumble. Deep, mechanical, unnatural. It rolls through the forest like thunder trapped beneath the earth. Tank engines. The men of the 1st Battalion, 9th Infantry Regiment don't look up at first. They're too busy digging. Or trying to. Entrenching tools strike frozen soil with dull, useless thuds. Sparks sometimes flicker as metal scrapes against rock-hard ground. The earth refuses to give. Every inch has to be fought for. One soldier mutters through chattering teeth, "Might as well dig into steel." No one laughs. These men are already spent. Hours ago they were somewhere else, fighting, bleeding, surviving. Now they've been ordered here to this nameless crossroads near Wahlerscheid to hold. Just hold, no matter what comes. At the center of it all stands Lieutenant Colonel William Dawes McKinley. He studies the terrain in the dim winter light. A narrow road cuts through open ground, flanked by hedgerows, scattered trees, and one key structure, the Palm farmhouse. It isn't much, but here, it's everything. Because whoever controls this crossroads controls movement through this sector of the Ardennes. And tonight, that means everything. McKinley turns to one of his officers. They'll come through here. Not a guess. A certainty. The wind cuts harder now, slicing through coats, gloves, skin. Breath hangs thick in the air. Fingers are stiff, slow. Some men can barely feel their hands anymore. You can almost feel it. The cold isn't just uncomfortable, it's alive. It creeps in quietly, then settles into your bones. The battalion spreads out. Foxholes, shallow, incomplete, dot the frozen ground. Machine gun teams position themselves along hedgerows. Bazooka teams check their rockets, careful, methodical. Everyone knows what's coming. They just don't know when. Then, a pause. The rumble grows louder. Closer. From the dark edge of the forest, something moves. At first, it's just shapes. Large, slow, almost ghost-like through the haze of cold air and fading light. A soldier squints. Those ours? No answer. Because no one is sure. The confusion is real. American and German lines have shifted rapidly over the past 24 hours. Units are scattered. Communications are broken. And in this freezing twilight, with visibility fading, it's hard to tell friend from enemy. The shapes keep coming. Steel silhouettes against the trees. Then, a flash. A thunderous crack. The ground shakes violently. One of the leading tanks erupts in a burst of flame and smoke, its hull twisted, tracks shattered. A mine. The illusion shatters instantly. These are not friendly tanks. These are German. And they've just driven straight into the crossroads. Enemy armor! The shout rips through the line. Everything changes in a heartbeat. Machine guns open up. Rifles crack in sharp, desperate bursts. The Americans dive into their shallow foxholes, pressing themselves into the frozen earth as the first real exchange of fire begins. From the forest, more tanks emerge. Panthers. Low, sleek, deadly. Behind them, infantry spill forward, dark figures moving fast, weapons ready. Elements of the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend. Young, aggressive, relentless. The first rounds hit the American line. Dirt explodes upward, branches shatter, bullets rip through hedgerows, slicing through anything in their path. A machine gun crew is forced to reposition as incoming fire chews apart their cover. McKinley doesn't flinch. Hold your fire. Wait. He knows they can't waste ammunition. Not here, not now. The enemy is still advancing. Still closing. The burning tank casts flickering light across the battlefield. Shadows move through smoke. And then, another Panther pushes forward, its turret rotating slowly, methodically. Hunting. Somewhere along the line, a bazooka team steadies themselves. Hands trembling, Not from fear, but from cold. One of them whispers, "Let it get closer. Closer. Closer." The tank fires. A deafening blast. The shell tears through a hedgerow, sending wood and earth flying. The shockwave hits like a punch, rattling bones, stealing breath. Men flinch, but they don't break. The bazooka fires. A streak of smoke cuts through the air. Impact. A burst of flame erupts along the Panther's side. Not destroyed, but damaged. Slowed. The battle has begun. Fully. Violently. And there is no pulling back now. McKinley looks across his line. He sees it clearly. They are outnumbered. Outgunned. And already the Germans are probing for weak points. But this crossroads, this frozen, miserable patch of ground, has to be held. Because behind them other American units are still moving, still forming a line, still trying to understand the scale of what's happening in the Ardennes. If this position falls too quickly, the road opens, and the German advance accelerates. This isn't just a fight for survival. It's a fight for time. The rumble of engines grows louder again. More tanks, more infantry. The forest is alive with them now. And the men of the 1st Battalion, 9th Infantry, cold, exhausted, outnumbered, tighten their grips on their weapons. Because this is only the beginning. And the real storm hasn't even hit yet. Hours earlier, before the cold settled into their bones, before the engines in the forest, before Lausdell became a killing ground, they had already paid the price. Wahlerscheid, a name most would never remember. But for the men of the 1st Battalion, 9th Infantry Regiment, it was hell carved into the trees. The forest there was dense, tight, suffocating. Snow clung to branches, weighed down by the silence of winter, until it was shattered by gunfire. The Germans had fortified the area well, dug in positions, overlapping fields of fire, machine guns hidden among trees and bunkers that seemed to appear out of nowhere. And yet, the Americans had taken it. It wasn't clean. It wasn't quick. It was brutal. You can almost hear it. The snap of rifles, the chatter of machine guns echoing through the forest, the screams of men caught in crossfire. Every yard gained had to be fought for. Every position cleared up close. Grenades tossed into bunkers. Flamethrowers hissing through narrow openings. Bayonets fixed when ammunition ran low. This wasn't maneuver warfare. This was survival at arm's length. At the center of it all, officers shouted orders over the chaos, trying to keep units together as visibility dropped and confusion spread. Men got separated. Squads became fragments. And still, they pushed forward. By the time the fighting ended, Wahlerscheid was theirs. But it had cost them. Bodies lay scattered through the snow. Some still where they had fallen mid-charge. Others slumped against trees, rifles still in hand. Medics moved quickly, too quickly, trying to save those who could still be saved. But there were too many. The survivors didn't celebrate. They didn't cheer. They just stood there, breathing hard, too tired to feel anything else. And then, the order came. They were leaving. At first, it didn't make sense. Men looked at each other confused. They had just fought for this ground. Bled for it. Taken it. Now they were being told to abandon it. Lieutenant Colonel William Dawes McKinley received the order without argument. He understood something his men couldn't fully see yet. The situation was changing. Fast. German forces were moving. Not just probing attacks. Not just local counterattacks. Something bigger, much bigger. The offensive that would later be known as the Battle of the Bulge had already begun. And the American lines were about to bend, hard. There was no time to hold Wahlerscheid. No time to reinforce it. No time to even properly regroup. They had to move. Now. The march south began almost immediately. No rest. No time to recover. The men moved through freezing terrain, boots crunching through snow and mud, carrying everything they had left. Some limped. Some leaned on others. Some walked in silence, too exhausted to speak. You can almost feel it. That hollow, drained exhaustion. The kind that doesn't go away with rest. The kind that lives in your muscles, your lungs, your thoughts. Behind them, Wahlerscheid faded into the distance. A victory left behind. Ahead of them, uncertainty. As they moved, reports filtered in. Fragmented. Confusing. German armor breaking through. Units cut off. Roads compromised. Nothing clear. Everything urgent. One soldier muttered, "What the hell is going on?" No one had an answer. The further they marched, the colder it seemed to get. Wind picked up, biting through layers already soaked with sweat and melted snow. Fingers went numb. Faces turned pale. And still, they kept moving. Because stopping wasn't an option. By the time they reached the area near Lausdell, night was already closing in. The sky dimmed to a dull gray. Then black. And that's when the new order came. Hold the crossroads. No elaborate briefing. No detailed plan. Just a position on a map. And a simple directive. McKinley gathered what officers he had left. They stood in the cold, maps spread out, breath fogging in the air. "This is where we make our stand," he said. Some of the men barely had time to process it. They had just come out of one brutal fight. Now they were being thrown into another. But there was something else in McKinley's voice. Something steady, certain. He knew what was at stake. If the Germans pushed through here, they wouldn't just take a crossroads. They would break through a gap. Exploit it, drive deeper, faster, and everything behind this position would be at risk. So the men spread out again. Digging, positioning, preparing. No rest, no warmth, no safety. Just the quiet understanding that this muddy, frozen junction of roads, was now the line, and they were all that stood on it. As the last positions were set, one soldier leaned against the wall of the Palm farmhouse, trying to catch his breath. He looked out into the darkness. Listened. At first, nothing. Just wind. Then, a distant sound. Low. Growing. Unmistakable. Engines. He straightened slowly. Others heard it too. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. From the forest. Something was coming. And this time, they weren't marching toward it. It was coming for them. The sound grows louder. Not just one engine. Many. A rolling, grinding chorus of steel moving through the forest. The men along the crossroads go still. No one speaks now. No one needs to. They've heard this before. They know what it means. From the dark tree line beyond Lausdell, shapes begin to form again, just like before. Low silhouettes, angular, heavy. But this time, there's no confusion. Armor. The word moves down the line in a whisper. A flare suddenly bursts overhead, white light flooding the crossroads for a split second. And in that moment, you see them. Panthers, long-barreled guns, sloped armor, tracks grinding through snow and mud as they push forward with terrifying confidence. Behind them, shadows of infantry moving fast, staying close to the steel. Elements of the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend advancing exactly as they were trained to do. Aggressive. Coordinated. Relentless. The flare fades. Darkness returns. But now the Americans know exactly what they're facing. One Panther edges forward along the road, its turrets slowly rotating, scanning. Another follows behind it, then another. They're probing, testing, looking for resistance. Lieutenant Colonel William Dawes McKinley watches from his position, eyes locked on the advancing armor. He doesn't give the order to fire. Not yet, because once they do, there's no going back. A bazooka team lies prone near a hedgerow, barely breathing. The gunner adjusts his aim, tracking the lead tank as it inches closer. The assistant beside him whispers, "Wait." Closer. The ground trembles slightly under the weight of the advancing Panthers. Snow shifts, mud cracks. Closer. The lead tank rolls forward. And then, a violent explosion erupts beneath it. The mine detonates with a deafening blast, lifting the front of the Panther off the ground before slamming it back down. Flame bursts from beneath the hull. Tracks snap, metal twists. The tank is crippled. For half a second, everything freezes. Then, chaos, fire. The American line erupts. Rifles crack in rapid succession. Machine guns hammer out bursts of fire. Bazookas launch rockets that streak through the dark toward the advancing armor. The Germans react instantly. Turrets swing. Guns fire. A shell slams into the hedgerow, obliterating a section of cover and sending dirt and debris flying into the air. The shockwave hits like a physical force, knocking men flat. The crossroads becomes a storm of noise and violence. One Panther pushes past the disabled lead tank, firing as it moves. Its main gun flashes, lighting up the battlefield in brief, blinding bursts. A bazooka rocket strikes its side. A flash of fire. But not enough. The tank keeps moving. Reload. Hands fumble with the next round, fingers numb from cold, shaking from adrenaline. Nearby, another team fires. Direct hit. This time, the impact is different. The Panther jerks violently. Flames burst from the engine compartment. Smoke pours out thick and black. Inside, the crew has seconds. Then the hatch bursts open. A figure climbs out, on fire. He stumbles, falls, rolls in the snow. The battlefield doesn't pause. It never does. German infantry surge forward behind the armor, using the chaos as cover. They move fast, low to the ground, rifles ready, closing the distance. The Americans meet them head-on. At one position, a soldier fires until his rifle clicks empty, then reaches for grenades, pulling pins with stiff fingers and throwing them over the hedgerow. Explosions ripple outward, scattering the advancing infantry. Another man drags a wounded comrade back into a shallow foxhole, pressing him down, trying to stop the bleeding with gloved hands that barely work. The cold is everywhere now. In the air. In the ground. In their bodies. And still, they fight. At the Palm farmhouse, the center of the position begins to draw heavy fire. Machine gun rounds rake across the walls. Windows shatter. Wood splinters. Inside, men scramble for cover, returning fire through broken openings. A Panther turns its gun toward the structure. Fires. The impact is devastating. The wall explodes inward, filling the interior with dust, debris, and smoke. For a moment, you can't see anything. Then shapes move again. Men coughing, disoriented, but still alive. Still fighting. Out near the road, one of the American soldiers, William Suderman, moves into position with his bazooka. He doesn't rush. Doesn't panic. He waits. Another Panther rolls into view, its attention fixed on the farmhouse. It hasn't seen him yet. Suderman steadies himself. Breath slow. Hands firm. He fires. The rocket streaks forward. Impact. The tank erupts in flame. This time, it stops. The explosion sends a wave of heat across the snow-covered ground, briefly cutting through the freezing air. Suderman ducks low, already reaching for another round. Because he knows. There are more coming. And he's right. From the tree line, more Panthers emerge. More infantry. The attack isn't slowing. It's building. McKinley sees it clearly now. This isn't just a probing force. This is a spearhead. And his battalion, cold, exhausted, outnumbered, is standing directly in its path. The crossroads shakes under the weight of war. Explosions, gunfire, screams. The night is no longer dark. It's alive with flashes of fire and streaks of tracer rounds. And still, The line holds. But for how long? Because the Germans aren't stopping. They're adapting. Pushing harder. Closing in from multiple directions now. The Americans are being surrounded. Slowly. Relentlessly. And at the center of it all, the Palm farmhouse burns. The Palm farmhouse is no longer a building, it's a target. Flames lick up through shattered beams, casting wild, flickering light across the crossroads. Smoke pours into the freezing air, thick and choking, drifting low across the battlefield like a living thing. Inside, men move through dust, fire, and splintered wood. Coughing, reloading, fighting. A machine gun team braces near what used to be a doorway. "Keep it steady," one shouts. The gun rattles violently, sending a stream of bullets into the advancing shadows beyond the flames. German infantry drop, scatter, regroup, then push again. They keep coming. Outside, the ground is churned into a mixture of snow, mud, and blood. Every step is a struggle. Every position, temporary. Near a hedgerow just beyond the farmhouse, 3 American soldiers huddle low. Joe Busey, Charlie Roberts, and Otis Bone. They're watching a Panther. It's close. Too close. The tank has pushed up near the farmhouse, its engine rumbling steadily, turrets sweeping left and right. Its presence dominates everything around it. Rifles barely matter against it. Even bazookas struggle at bad angles. Busey grips something in his hand. A bottle. Filled with gasoline. A rag stuffed into its neck. Roberts looks at him. "You serious?" Busey doesn't answer. He just nods. Bone pulls a phosphorus grenade from his gear. The plan is simple, desperate, and possibly suicidal. They wait, watching the tank, timing it. The Panther shifts slightly, its attention fixed on another position further down the line. That's the moment. They move. Fast. Low. Boots slip in mud as they close the distance, every step feeling impossibly loud despite the chaos around them. Gunfire cracks overhead. Explosions shake the ground. But somehow, they're not seen. Busey lights the rag. For a split second, the flame flickers in the cold air. Then, he throws. The bottle shatters against the rear of the Panther. Flames spread instantly, clinging to the metal, dripping down into vents and seams. Bone follows. The phosphorus grenade arcs through the air. And hits. A violent burst of white-hot fire erupts. It burns differently. More intensely. More viciously. The tank reacts. The engine roars louder, then chokes. Smoke pours out, thick and black. Inside, panic. The hatch flies open. A crewman scrambles out, engulfed in smoke and flame, stumbling into the snow. Another tries to follow, but doesn't make it. The Panther is done. Busey, Roberts, and Bone don't stay to watch. They're already moving back, diving for cover as machine gun fire tears through the space they just occupied. Behind them, the tank burns. At the farmhouse, the situation is worsening. The fire is spreading. Heat pushes outward, forcing defenders to reposition constantly. Walls that once provided cover are now hazards, collapsing, burning, unstable. A section of roof caves in with a thunderous crash, sending sparks and embers into the air. Men scatter, coughing, eyes stinging from smoke. Still, they hold. From the eastern side of the crossroads, German infantry push again, using the burning farmhouse as partial cover. They're getting closer now. Too close. Hand grenades begin to fly both ways. Short distances. Brutal impacts. One explodes just outside a foxhole, dirt and snow raining down on the men inside. Another lands among advancing Germans, detonating with a sharp crack, scattering the formation. The fighting is no longer at range. This is close. Personal. At one position, a soldier fires his last rounds, then drops his rifle and grabs a grenade, pulling the pin with his teeth before hurling it forward. No pause. No hesitation. Across the line, another Panther emerges through the smoke. This one is careful. Slower. Learning. Its turret rotates toward a cluster of American positions near the hedgerow. It fires. The blast is devastating. The explosion tears through the line, throwing men backward, shredding cover, leaving a crater where there had been defenders seconds before. For a moment, that section goes silent. A gap. The Germans see it. And they push. McKinley sees it too. "Reinforce that flank," he shouts, already moving. Men shift positions, scrambling through mud and fire to plug the hole. They don't have reserves, just fragments. And still, they close the gap. The crossroads is barely recognizable now. The clean lines of roads and fields have been erased, replaced by churned earth, burning wreckage, and scattered bodies. The cold remains, but now it mixes with heat. Fire and frost, death in every direction. And through it all, the Germans keep coming. This is no longer a test. No longer a probe. This is an attempt to break them. From three sides now, pressure builds. Armor. Infantry. Relentless. The Americans are holding. But only just. Inside what remains of the farmhouse, a soldier leans against a shattered wall, breathing hard, rifle resting across his knees. He looks out at the battlefield. At the burning tanks. At the advancing shadows. And for a moment, you can see it in his eyes. The realization. They are alone here. And no one is coming to save them. Outside, another explosion rocks the ground. Another position nearly collapses. Another push begins. McKinley wipes dirt and sweat from his face, scanning the line. Calculating. Measuring. He knows something now. Something critical. They cannot hold this forever. But they don't have to. They just have to hold long enough. Because somewhere behind them, other units are forming. Repositioning. Preparing. And every minute, every second, this battered, freezing, outnumbered battalion survives. Is time the Germans don't get back. But time is running out. And the pressure is about to become unbearable. The line is bending, not breaking. Not yet, but bending. The Germans are closer now than they've ever been. You can hear them shouting, clear, sharp commands cutting through the chaos. Boots crunching over snow. Metal clanking. The unmistakable rhythm of men advancing with purpose. At multiple points along the crossroads, the distance between the two sides has collapsed to mere yards. Not fields, not roads. Yards. A machine gun position goes silent. Then another. Lieutenant Colonel William Dawes McKinley sees it happening in real time. The gaps are opening faster now. Too fast to plug with what little he has left. He turns to one of his officers. "Where's Granville?" Nearby, crouched low behind what remains of a shattered hedgerow, is Lieutenant John Granville. A radio handset pressed tightly to his ear. His face is pale, not from fear, but from cold and exhaustion. Around him, the world is collapsing. Bullets snap overhead. Explosions shake the ground. Men shout, fall, crawl. But Granville is focused on one thing. Coordinates. Adjust fire. Grid. Repeat. Grid. His voice is steady. Precise. On the other end of that radio, miles away, American artillery batteries are waiting. Loaded. Ready. Blind. They can't see the battlefield. They can only trust him. Granville looks up briefly. And what he sees changes everything. German infantry are breaking through. Not probing anymore. Not testing. Breaking through. Behind them. Tanks. The distance is collapsing so quickly that there is no longer a safe margin. No buffer. No space. He looks down at the map again. Then at the battlefield. Then back to the radio. And he makes a decision. Fire mission. Danger close. There's a pause on the line. A hesitation. Confirm? Granville doesn't hesitate. Confirmed. Because he knows what it means. The shells will land almost on top of them. Too close. But if they don't, the Germans will overrun the entire position. Seconds pass. They feel like minutes. Then, a distant sound. Low. Rising. The first artillery shell screams overhead. Impact. The explosion is massive. Earth erupts into the air. Snow, mud, and debris blast outward in all directions. The shockwave slams into everything. Men, trees, vehicles, flattening anything not anchored to the ground. Then another. And another. The barrage begins. The world becomes noise. Deafening. Continuous. Unrelenting. American shells rain down across the crossroads, tearing into the advancing German forces with devastating force. But they're landing everywhere. Too close. In one foxhole, 2 soldiers press themselves as low as possible, helmets scraping against frozen earth as explosions detonate just yards away. Dirt rains down on them. One shouts something, but it's lost in the thunder. Nearby, a German advance stalls instantly. Men dive for cover, those who can. Others are simply gone. The Panthers hesitate. Even they cannot push through this kind of fire. One tank attempts to move forward. A shell lands nearby. The blast rocks it violently, throwing its aim off, forcing it to halt. The artillery is doing what nothing else could. It's stopping the advance. But at a cost. Fragments slice through the air indiscriminately. American and German alike. A soldier is thrown from his position by the force of a nearby blast. Another is buried partially under debris, clawing his way back to the surface. Granville remains on the radio. Adjusting. Correcting. Bringing the fire even closer. Shift left, 50, drop, 20. His voice is calm. Almost detached. Because it has to be. Around him, men are dying. But the line is holding. Barely. The German assault falters under the storm. Infantry scatter. Tanks pull back slightly, unable to advance through the barrage without risking destruction. For the first time since the Panthers arrived, the pressure eases. Not gone, never gone, but slowed, and that's enough. McKinley sees it, feels it, that brief, fragile shift. He knows what it means. They've bought time. But not much. The artillery cannot last forever. Ammunition will run low. Guns will need to shift to other targets. And when it stops, the Germans will come again. Stronger, angrier, more determined. Granville lowers the radio for a moment. His hands are shaking now. Not from fear. From everything. He looks out across the crossroads. What was once a position is now a scar. Burning wrecks. Cratered ground. Bodies scattered across the snow. And still? Somehow, the Americans are there. Still in their foxholes. Still gripping their weapons. Still breathing. Still holding. But they are running out of everything. Ammunition. Strength. Men. And the Germans are not finished. In the distance, through smoke and falling debris, engines start again. Low. Growing. Returning. The artillery fades, not all at once, but enough. The thunder that had held the Germans back begins to drift away, shells landing farther out, less frequent, less immediate. The air settles. The ground stops shaking. And into that silence, the engines return. Low, patient, unfinished. The men of the 1st Battalion, 9th Infantry, don't need orders to understand what comes next. They've been here long enough now. Long enough to know the pattern. The Germans are coming again, but something has changed. The attacks are slower now, more cautious. The Panthers edge forward carefully, scanning for mines, for movement, for any sign of another sudden trap. Infantry follow at a distance, no longer rushing blindly into fire. They've learned, and so have the Americans. Lieutenant Colonel William Dawes McKinley moves along what remains of his line. It's thinner now, much thinner. Positions that once held squads now hold 2, maybe 3 men. Some foxholes are silent, empty. He doesn't stop at them. He can't. He pauses at one position where a soldier sits slumped against the edge of a crater, rifle resting loosely in his hands. Alive, barely. McKinley leans in. "You still with me?" A slow nod. That's enough. He moves on. Because the fight isn't over. But something else is happening. Time has passed. More than they realize. Hours. 18 of them. 18 hours of holding. Of fighting. Of surviving. Behind them, far beyond the crossroads, other American units have moved. Repositioned. Formed a line. The delay has worked. What was supposed to be a fast German breakthrough has slowed. Just enough. The momentum is gone. Not completely. But enough to matter. Back at the crossroads, the battlefield is almost unrecognizable. Burned out. Panthers sit like blackened skeletons in the snow. Cratered earth stretches in every direction. The Palm farmhouse is gone, reduced to smoldering ruins. And scattered among it all, the cost. American. German. The cold hasn't changed. It's still there. Still biting. Still relentless. But now it feels different. Heavier. The Germans probe again, but without the same force. Without the same urgency. They've been delayed too long. Orders begin to shift. Priorities change. The moment for a clean breakthrough here has passed. McKinley gathers what remains of his officers. There aren't many left. He doesn't give a speech. There's no need. Prepare to withdraw. The words hang in the air. Not defeat. Not retreat in panic. Withdrawal. Controlled. Measured. Because they've done what they came here to do. They've held. The movement begins slowly. Carefully. Wounded are lifted where possible. Supported where they can walk. Left behind only when there is no other choice. Each step away from the crossroads feels heavy. Earned. Some men glance back. At the wreckage. At the ground they held. At the place where everything could have ended. But didn't. Because they stayed. Because they fought. Because they refused to break. As the last elements begin to pull back, the Germans do not surge forward immediately. They move cautiously. Carefully. Because they don't know what's left. What traps remain? What resistance still hides in the ruined ground? And that hesitation, even now, costs them time. The kind of time that changes outcomes. The kind of time that rewrites momentum. The kind of time that shapes battles far beyond a single crossroads. In the days that follow, the Battle of the Bulge will rage across the Ardennes. Massive forces. Armored divisions. Entire towns swallowed by combat. But here, at Lausdell, it came down to something smaller. Something quieter. Something easy to overlook. A single battalion. Cold. Exhausted. Outnumbered. Standing in the path of something much larger than themselves. And holding. For 18 hours. Long enough. Because sometimes, war doesn't turn on grand offensives or sweeping victories. Sometimes, it turns on a muddy crossroads. In the freezing dark, where a handful of men decide not to give ground.